All right, everybody. For today's critical thought, we're going to be continuing our conversation about level design when it comes to either any kind of game or just philosophy in general. In our last post, we talked about things as a difference of philosophy of environmental versus level design. But for this one, we're going to discuss what I feel are three key traits of great levels. And this spans genre and platform as well. A lot of this came from when I made a post about level design from learning it in Mario Maker. But to start off with, the first big point is that a good level has to have personality to it. To make this analogy to like TV show or movie, it's the hook. What is the focal point of your level? Could be your level could be built around a haunted house theme. It could be jumping across cars on a highway, running across those rolling logs in the water, you name it. But this is essentially the mission statement for your level. And again, depending upon the game and the design in question, this can mean different things regarding what you're going to be building. Nevertheless, it's important that you have one focus point for your game or for each level. Too often, lesser game developers will try and throw everything into a single level. It's going to be a stealth, open action, fighting, underwater stage. And this tends to muddy the waters because by focusing on just one goal or one element, it allows you to have a good understanding as to how much you've developed, what you have left, and also the limitations that this system or this focus point has for you. Because again, great game design is about getting things as perfected and as iterated on as possible. And you can't really do that when you're adding everything into your game. Now, when it comes to deciding what your focus is going to be, again, this varies based on the design of your title. But typically, again, it's about establishing some kind of theme or something you want to elicit out of the player. Now, with that said, the second big point is that a good level has to test the player in some way, shape, or form. Basically, the player should come out of the level being better at the game than they were before going into it. And again, a test can vary from any form of design. Are you designing a level around a puzzle? Is it about testing the player's ability to understand stealth, cover, you name it? The point is that at the end of the day, the player should be able to improve after playing this level. And if they can't, then there's a problem there. Now, how far you want to test the player, that varies depending on what kind of audience you're aiming for. If I'm building my game around like the Super Meat Boy, I want to be the guy level, then I'm going to make things a little bit harder for you. If I'm building this around like, let's say, Kirby or any like game aimed at like the E to E10 level, I'm not going to be throwing in super challenging stuff at you. But too often developers will repeat level designs or they'll never really challenge the player going forward. Once they've learned how to do X, they're not going to introduce Y or Z. They're just going to repeat X over and over again. And this is a mainstay of a lot of arcade design games, where the difficulty comes not with improving the player, but just making it harder from the design standpoint. So I'm doing the same exact thing, it's just I'm doing it a little bit harder this time. Maybe the enemy's a little bit faster, or there's less room for error. But at the end of the day, good levels should make the player feel great about finishing them. They should have an excitement when they cross the finish line, or you see that you have defeated a monster in a Souls game. Anything along those lines. And if the player isn't feeling it, then it's just going to be like they're going through the motions. And that's not good if you want your game to be memorable. Speaking of which, the third and major point, and probably one of the hardest to do, is that a good level is unique. Meaning that the level itself does not repeat anywhere else in the span of your game. This is a big point about a lot of titles. Again, going back to older game designs that try to pack as many levels into a game as possible. This is where like arcade games having like 50, 60 boards, and the whole idea that more is always better. But that's not necessarily the case. Going back to what I just said regarding the player going through the motions, if your game is just repeating the same challenges, is repeating the same content, then all you're really doing is padding things out. You're not really making new things. And players can feel that, whether they know it explicitly or if it's just, something under their skin or in the back of their mind. That I'm just doing the same thing over and over again. What am I supposed to do now? And this is a good metric for deciding how long a game should be. Because typically, it's important to understand the length or how much you can get out of your core gameplay loop and any supplementary mechanics and systems. This again goes back to why more is not always better. If I'm trying to fill my game with content and I'm just repeating stuff over and over again, yes, I may hit 10 to 20 hours of play, but how much of that is someone enjoying? Probably not as much as you think. And one of the things we've seen, especially in the market over the years, is that gamers today, I think, prefer quality over quantity. There's so many games being released on a day-to-day basis that you don't have the time to play through all of them, much less wait until the game gets good. And we've certainly have talked about that one before. The same could also be said of videos like this. It's why you won't see me sitting here and talking to you for 30, 40 minutes in these single topics. But once you start to repeat yourself, that is a good sign to know that it's time to stop your game or end things there. Now, on the other hand, if you can come up with 30, 40, 50 hours of original content, go nuts. Again, as long as the player is being engaged, the levels are memorable, and they're being tested, go nuts. You're free to go as far as I'm concerned. But it can be very hard sometimes to get a level to work on under all three conditions, especially when it comes to memorable content. Because again, your core gameplay loop is your core gameplay loop. That's not going to change from hour 1 to hour 15 or plus. And that is essentially going to be the foundation for everything in your title. And that makes it hard sometimes to say, okay, how do I essentially keep presenting the player the same thing, but it's just a little bit different? That's where usually the supplemental content or the secondary game systems come into play. Again, in a game like the 3D Mario titles, for instance, Mario's moveset does not change at all from beginning to end. Instead, what the game is testing the player on at any specific moment is different. This could be the sliding that we see in Mario 64. Sections where a platform is underneath you and you have to keep up with it by going somewhere else. Yes, I'm technically doing the same thing, but what the game is asking me to do at each one of these points is different. Now, with that said, we're going to wrap things up for today, and here's my question for you folks. Can you think of examples of really great levels that have satisfied all three conditions? And can you think of levels that didn't work, that failed to do it? And for you folks watching, when do you feel enough is enough? Is there such a thing as a game that can go on forever? Or can you hit that point where no matter what the game is presenting with you, you've just had enough? And for this video, I want to focus on single-player driven games. So multiplayer titles like Overwatch, Team Fortress, Payday, PUBG, those don't count for today. Because that is a different kind of progression and a different kind of challenge, which we could certainly come back to again in the future. But with all that said, thank you so much for watching today's Critical Thought. Be sure to check back for more discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until our next video, have a great night, everybody. Before we get to the credits, just want to give a quick shout out to the fans and supporters over on patreon.com/GWBycer. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check back around 10 Eastern for regular streaming. If you'd like to suggest games for me to cover or topics to talk about, let me know in the comments below. For a collection of my writings as well as weekly podcasts on design, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the Game Wisdom Patreon, you can find us on there on patreon.com/gwbycer. $1 will get you into our private Discord channel where we talk game topics and more. $5 will get you voting privileges for any major event, including the Saturday Night Grab Bag, Patreon-funded goals, and more. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you enjoy more videos here on the Game Wisdom YouTube channel.